Greetings to all. Welcome back, and thank you for your presence. Today we have a novel narrative to provide, so let us commence. I once believed my life was flawless. My wife Layla and I constructed an exquisite residence in a tranquil suburb. Our existence together epitomized peace, characterized by coordinated coffee mugs, Friday movie nights, and a mutual passion for gardening. Individuals in our vicinity frequently remarked on our perceived fortune, suggesting that we epitomized the ideal pair. Nonetheless, those remarks, despite their commendatory nature, now resonate insincerely in my perception. In reality, perfection is an illusion, and I was oblivious to the fissures that had started to emerge in our relationship. Initially, I failed to observe them, or perhaps I was unwilling to do so. Layla was employed in marketing, a profession necessitating extensive business travel, frequently leaving me to oversee domestic responsibilities independently. I placed my whole trust in her, like any husband would. What would prevent me from doing so? She was my associate, my trusted confidant. I was satisfied with my modest role overseeing a supply chain team, and I respected her ambition. She was extroverted and the center of attention at every gathering, but I, conversely, liked to remain on the periphery. Our disparities appeared to enhance one another, or so I believed. Chloe, in the months preceding that pivotal revelation, circumstances began to alter. Gradually, Layla started returning home more later. Initially, I convinced myself that it was merely work, and that her tasks required her attention more than normal. Chloe, minor indications emerged, such as her tendency to grasp her phone tightly while laughing at messages she refrained from disclosing to me. Whenever I inquired, she would smile and assert it was merely work-related matters or simply socializing with the girls. Her response was consistently identical. I desired to trust her. I believed her. Chloe, there were instances, transient and nearly undetectable, when a minor, persistent doubt infiltrated my thoughts. One night, I awoke parched and proceeded to the kitchen for a glass of water. Upon passing the living room, I observed the subtle illumination of Layla's phone screen. I presumed she had left it there. Initially, I dismissed it, but my curiosity ultimately prevailed. I recognized it was inappropriate to intrude, yet it seemed as though destiny had guided me to this very time. I seized her phone, paused momentarily, and unlocked it. She consistently entrusted me with her passcode, never ever contemplating that I would violate her privacy. I convinced myself that I was merely reviewing her texts to ascertain that all was well. Chloe, what I discovered undermined the trust one had in her, as well as in myself. The initial communication I encountered was from an individual named Gloria. "Can't quit thinking about you. Last night was great." My heart stopped. My hand quivered. For an instant, my surroundings shrunk into obscurity. I could hear my heartbeat reverberating in my ears as I again read the phrases. Last night was extraordinary. What was the significance of that? My thoughts accelerated, swirling in perplexity. I reviewed the exchange, hoping for an innocuous rationale. Chloe, the messages merely intensified my feeling of betrayal. Nocturnal gatherings, affectionate emojis, private humor, all experiences from which I had been excluded. The messages conveyed more than a mere relationship. They discussed a profound, more personal matter. It was more than merely an relationship. It was an emotional bond of which I was previously unaware. I replaced the phone precisely in its original location, paused momentarily, and gazed out the window. The significance of the discovery gradually became apparent. An internal tempest was brewing, one I could not disregard. I possessed numerous inquiries. Who was Gloria? What was the duration of this occurrence? Why had Ariadna deceived me for such an extended period? I spent hours that night in the living room, reflecting on every moment of our marriage, attempting to discern what had transpired incorrectly. Her cessation of morning farewell kisses. I have never seen her wear the new lingerie. The abrupt acquisition of gym memberships and the outings with female companions. Elements that previously appeared unremarkable now appeared as warning signs. Everything is now comprehensible, yet the most painful aspect was not the infidelity itself. It was the acknowledgement that I had been oblivious to it all. I had placed my trust in her, bestowed my loyalty, and in exchange, she had deceived me. As the sun ascended, the initial surge of pain began to transform, supplanted by a more sinister and intense sensation. Fury. No, it was not solely anger. It was a subdued, measured rage. I was not merely incensed at Ariadna for her betrayal. I was frustrated with myself for being so gullible and trusting. Due to fragility, that morning, Ariadna descended the stairs, beaming and inquiring if I desired pancakes for breakfast, entirely oblivious to the turmoil within me. I gazed at her intently, the woman I had cherished, the woman with whom I had constructed a life. In that moment, I recognized that she did not perceive me as a threat. She perceived me as innocuous and easily disregarded. She was unaware of my potential. That constituted her initial error, because Ariadna was unaware of my former identity. And I was about to remind her. I couldn't act immediately. Retaliation isn't something you rush. It takes patience, preparation, and precision. I knew I had to gather proof, undeniable evidence of her betrayal, before I could approach her. I couldn't go to her with just suspicions. I needed to be sure. So I played my part that morning. I smiled, ate the pancakes she made, kissed her on the cheek, and headed off to work. Inside, though, I was seething. The image of Ariadna laughing with Gloria was burnt into my consciousness, but I pushed it aside. Now wasn't the time for feelings. Now was the moment for action. At lunch, I contacted a private investigator. His name was Dale, and he came highly recommended online. When we met later that evening at a coffee shop, I lay everything out. I told him I felt my wife was having a relationship, and that I needed proof, images, texts, places, anything. Dale, with a sardonic look, assured me, "Discreet is my middle name. You'll have everything you need in no time." The next several days felt like an eternity. Ariadna carried on about her usual routine, joking, chatting, and even mentioned a work trip she had scheduled for the weekend. My gut nodded as she nonchalantly chatted about leaving town, knowing full well she was probably going to meet Gloria. But nonetheless, I didn't confront her. Not yet. 3 days later, Dale called. "Jack, you were right," he murmured, his voice stern. "I've got everything. Photos, timestamps, the full shebang." I met him that evening at his office. What he showed me left me cold. Images show Ariadna entering an upscale downtown hotel accompanied by Gloria. Captures of their textual exchanges. Specifications of their intended weekend excursion. It was not merely a trivial engagement. This was of greater profundity, a situation that had been developing for an extended period. As I scrutinized the evidence, an inward transformation commenced. My sorrow, my anguish, they began to diminish. I refrained from crying. I did not raise my voice. I did not perceive a necessity to retaliate. Rather, I commenced contemplation. Every act of betrayal warrants repercussions, and I was determined to see that Ariadna and Gloria confronted theirs. Ariadna was unaware of the consequences she had initiated. The meticulously devised strategy was now in its concluding phases, and she remained entirely unaware of the impending turmoil that would soon envelop her. Her life, which she believed she had dominion over, was disintegrating before her eyes. What is the most advantageous aspect? She continued to perceive me as the innocuous individual I formerly was. The days subsequent to her business travel were indistinct. I observed her frantic efforts to save her job and reconstruct the fragmented fragments of the life she had recklessly dismantled. She had not yet comprehended that what she had constructed, her profession, her social network, her ostensibly ideal marriage, was disintegrating due to her own decisions. I conversely was composed, poised, and attentive. After an extended period, I experienced a sense of control. I was no longer the man who had naively placed his trust, the man who had been a fool. The former Jack had vanished, replaced by an individual who was astute, tactical, and resolute in seeking retribution on his adversaries. The initial days following Ariadna's return from her business trip were characterized by stillness. Ariadna, eager to restore her reputation, engaged in damage control. Chloe, all her endeavors were futile. The fissures in her meticulously crafted mask were increasingly evident, and individuals were beginning to observe. One evening, she returned home from work appearing pallid and disheveled. Her typical confidence had vanished, supplanted by a jittery energy that I found nearly comical. She scarcely engaged with me, her thoughts evidently consumed by the disorder she had generated. "Jack," she ultimately articulated, shattering the silence. "I am genuinely apprehensive. The situation at work is deteriorating. The Human Resources Department is investigating the allegations. Individuals are conversing. I am uncertain how much longer I can sustain this." I observed her meticulously, absorbing each word and action. I was unequivocally certain that she was frightened. What I found most intriguing was her failure to make the necessary connections. She was unaware that I, her formerly trusted husband, had organized the entire relationship. The confidential notification to Human Resources, the images, the text communications. She believed another someone was responsible for everything, and someone intent on sabotaging her existence. Chloe, the reality was considerably more straightforward. Her own decisions had precipitated her demise. "You will overcome this, Ariadna," I stated gently, my voice scarcely above a whisper. "It is merely a misconception. All matters will resolve themselves." She gazed at me, her eyes brimming with despair. "Chloe," I discerned a glimmer of doubt among them. Her certainty had diminished. That, for me, was the gratifying essence of triumph. It beyond merely revealing her infidelity. It involved observing her disintegrate gradually as she comprehended the complete ramifications of her acts. "Chloe," I had not yet completed my task. The subsequent phase of my strategy involved intensifying pressure on Gloria. The man who had nonchalantly intruded upon my marriage, believing he could possess my wife and seize what belonged to me, was on the verge of confronting the repercussions of his own transgressions. I had previously discovered all pertinent information regarding him. His gambling addiction, his financial obligations, his dubious business transactions. I possessed an option. I could have pursued him immediately, but I preferred to ensure he endured suffering without ever realizing the source of his demise. I made many inconspicuous phone calls. I informed some of his less reputable creditors about his recent actions. I did not require direct threats against him. I was aware that the burden of his history would facilitate my efforts. Gloria soon began to experience the intensity. I observed the alterations in him when Ariadna mentioned him. She was deeply concerned and anxious about him. Chloe, I recognized that, behind the surface, she was beginning to question whether he justified the difficulties. His gaming debts were beginning to consume him. The incessant calls, menacing threats, and unwelcome visits were exacting a significant toll. Chloe, the most gratifying aspect was the realization that Ariadna was starting to experience the repercussions of her behavior. 2. One evening, she returned home, appearing much more disheveled than previously. "Jack, I require a conversation with you," she stated, pacing the living room. "Gloria is in distress. Individuals are pursuing him. He is receiving threatening calls." "Is it detrimental, Jack?" "Extremely poor." I struggled to suppress the smirk on my face. It was nearly effortless. She was ensnared between her extramarital relationship and the repercussions of her employment, and she had yet to ascertain the truth. "Do you believe he will be all right?" I inquired, seeming to be concerned. I was secretly enjoying her suffering. "I am uncertain," she remarked, shaking her head. "Everything is disintegrating. I am uncertain about my employment and my connection with Gloria." At that moment, I realized I had her just in the position I desired. She was unaware that I was orchestrating everything. She was unaware that I had systematically orchestrated her downfall. The most unfavorable aspect? She believed she was the victim in this situation. "Chloe," I had not yet completed my task. The ultimate strike was the most gratifying of them. Public exposure. Ariadna flourished in her self-presentation. Her career, friendships, and status were the elements that defined her. I understood that if I were to remove all of that, she would be left with nothing. I established an anonymous email account and meticulously composed a message to disseminate